The EFINA Podcast.
Welcome everyone to the EFInA Podcast. My name is Immanuel Umukoro, your usual host. In today's podcast episode, we're going to be discussing an interesting topic: POS terminal innovation, agent banking, and the inclusion agenda. Looking for the silver lining. As you know, the EFInA podcast discusses issues that are very germane to the ecosystem, where we try to offer strategic insight, surface evidence that can inform decision making that benefits all. We always say an economy that benefits all must first of all includes all. In today's podcast episode, I'm going to be discussing with a guest who is an OEM provider, but even before then has done a lot of work in the agency banking space through POS terminal activation. And today, I think his insights are going to be critical given the things that have surfaced in recent weeks. For instance, POS geo-tagging, right, as we rightly call it, and what all of those ones mean for us. Yeah, let me turn to my guest. Like I said, he is an OEM, and when I mean OEM, I mean original equipment, manufacturer. So all the terminals you see in the industry, the people who actually bring them in are the OEMs, and they are the bridge between the providers and the bridge between the providers and actually the end users, which we call the last mile. And he is no other person than Fego Okiomah. He is the country manager for Newland NPT. And if you are careful in the industry, you will see some terminals in that direction. And he's going to offer some strategic insight. Fego is a veteran in this ecosystem with some years of experience under his belt. He has an MBA in management from the Rome Business School. He is a graduate of Covenant University, and I think he has paid his dues in the ecosystem. Fego, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
The pleasure is mine. Yeah, so I will start by asking you one funny question that sometimes it leaves us with the wrong answer. When you hear somebody say, "I'm going to the POS," what rings in your mind?
Okay. Thank you very much once again for having me. I'll say that the industry overall has evolved across the years.
Okay.
A few years ago, this same question, if you were going to ask me that question, you'll be asking me, "Oh, I'm going to the ATM," because everybody believed they could do everything on the ATM, right? But just a few years afterwards, that shift has happened. And now everybody has moved to the point of sale. Now, what is point of sale? As far as I'm concerned, point of sale is point of contact, point of communication, and also the point where sale actually happens. But you see, the Nigerian factor has taken it a notch higher. If we take it to advanced world, you just have the Western world, everywhere, America, Europe, even China, payments are made on the desk. You go there, make your payments, and you go with a device and you just move. But because we have a peculiar need in Nigeria and also in Africa, we took it a notch higher by driving financial inclusion with this particular device. In fact, this use case was not popular in most other countries until we started doing it here in Africa, and of course at the forefront in Nigeria. So what is point of sale? Point of sale is the point where any transaction can happen. I dare say right now, point of sale, which is what everybody says, POS, has become the only channel where all transactions happen at the moment.
All right. So some data before us, that as at 2023, and I will come to 2025 as it is, that as at 2023, you have data, of over 1.9 million POS terminals being deployed as at 2023. But as at Q1 this year, we hear that there are over 10 million POS, point of sales terminal.
Approximately 8 to 10 million.
Yeah.
Approximately.
8 to 10 million.
Yes, please.
And but there is a gap in terms of terminals that are active, and we'll get into that conversation.
Correct.
So I hear that roughly about 5 million or thereabout are active.
Correct.
First and foremost, what does active mean, and why do we have that large gap?
Okay, so now I'll take off my OEM hat and
Yeah.
I'll put on my financial inclusion expertise.
We're going to get to your
hat,
OEM
right?
hat. Yeah.
So I remember when we were back in banking, we used to do. So there's an industry standard
Okay.
according to NIBS. So NIBS is the central switch for the Nigerian industry where all transactions pass through.
And also the payment terminal
And
service
also the
aggregator.
payment terminal service aggregator. So although right now in Nigeria we have two
Two.
service aggregators, but NIBS is the primary one that we've always used, you know. Now, NIBS is the one who measures the different metrics, you know. We have the active, we have the connected, and we have the registered. So take back to that conversation about the number of terminals. Now, that figure that we just mentioned, there's a high chance that that is the connected terminals, not the registered terminals.
Now, because of the people that are going to be listening to this,
good.
right? So when you say connected,
Yes.
please put a face to it.
Good.
What does that mean?
I think we'll focus on connected and active.
Okay.
Now, connected is any device that has attempted a transaction.
Okay.
In the real sense of it, right? There has been test transactions done on that device. You try to do a transaction, whether it's a test, whether it was just a pilot, but a test, and it has connected to any of the switches or the processors.
Awesome.
Doesn't mean that it has been deployed,
Okay.
but it has connected to the switches, right?
Which means that the ID is on the system.
The ID is on the system. So yes, that's what connected means. Now, active, according to NIBS and the industry standard, any terminal that has done a transaction of 100 naira and above. I hope those things haven't changed because I've not really been too long out of the banking sector, but at my last count, I'm still in the sector. So, but it's still the same. Any device that has done 100 naira and above is rated as active within a 30-day period. So if you do a transaction of 100 naira and above within 30 days, it is active.
Okay.
If it does a test transaction less than 100 naira, it's connected.
Okay.
Now, I could register and not connect and not deploy to make it active. So that's the difference. So
What does register mean?
registered means that, okay, so for every terminal, every POS you see out there, whether it's agent banking, whether it's at the merchant location, there are unique identities of each devices. So we call them terminal IDs and merchant IDs. Now, but the terminal IDs are unique to every terminal, while the merchant ID is unique to every merchant.
Merchants.
So the terminal ID registered. So as a partner, let's say as a bank working with, let's even say a bank, I can register terminal IDs for a potential customer. So let's say I have one of the biggest supermarkets. That supermarket has 10 outlets, okay? So they come to me, maybe the RM has opened the account. Oh, we've won this account. We want to deploy terminal.
By the way, RM is relationship
manager.
Yeah.
And so they come and say, we want to deploy. But we are taking initiative as the bank to say, they have 10 outlets.
Please
register.
Use the word FSP, Financial Service Provider.
FSP,
so that some of my brothers
can also,
don't
yes,
say,
okay.
I
understand.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so what happens is that they register those devices, but it hasn't been deployed.
Okay.
It hasn't connected.
So who do you register the device with?
With the central switch.
Great.
So NIBS and the processors and the transaction processors. So the switches, the third-party processors. So you can register those terminal IDs. Then at the point of deployment, then you run a test. Then it connects.
Yeah.
Then when it's deployed and starts doing
becomes
transaction,
active.
it becomes active.
Awesome. All right. You see why we needed to get into those technicalities, right? And so I was going to come to, let's wear your OEM cap again now.
Right on.
Great. All right. Now, POS, right? Like you rightly said, in those once you hear POS, in fact, right now, if you hear POS, if you are not an OEM, if you're not a banker, you're not a fintech, person, it just simply means you are going to withdraw money.
Exactly.
Irrespective of whether you're going to use it at a merchant location for payment, it's just withdrawal.
Same, like I said, for ATM, those days. Say, my ATM card. Meanwhile, it's just a debit card.
But
saying because ATM was the point of sale at that time.
Absolutely.
Technically.
Absolutely. So, how do you see this whole conversation around POS terminal transforming access? No, it's not your OEM cap I want you to wear now.
Okay.
Wear your, financial banking and financial inclusion cap.
Okay.
Transforming financial services for excluded segment. We'll come to specifications around terminals, much later in the conversation.
Yes.
But so you go out today, everywhere you go to, there is an umbrella. Any shop you go to, there is a small signboard, POS here. It's not POS here.
POS is here.
So whether it's an umbrella or you want to buy
if you're
something.
traveling to interstate,
do you understand?
in the middle of nowhere, you see POS here.
Exactly. How is this transforming access for excluded segments and the underserved?
This question, it's multi-pronged as far as I'm concerned.
Please go on.
I'll say that because from experience, what we have seen is that because of the way POS has morphed in the industry, POS currently serves the banked,
okay,
the unbanked, and the underbanked.
So let's put a caveat there.
Okay.
Does this mean, if you look at the distribution so far, as of today,
Correct.
from you travel interstate, because of your work also, meeting with partners and all of that, right? And you see how the terminals are concentrated. So when I speak to POS in this context now, I'm looking at agent terminals,
Correct.
right? Would you say we are banking the bank or increasing access for just the bank, or would you say that it is actually expanding access in real sense to the underbanked and underserved?
Okay. I'll say it this way. Again, throwing it back to the early days when we started, deploying terminals earlier on, you had concentrations in specific places. We called, or just say hubs. Every financial service provider, probably had a desk called financial inclusion or agency banking. At that point, the path wasn't very clear. And the reason for that was there were still a lot of hurdles in terms of, I'll say, regulatory hurdles at that time. But in the last couple of years, that has changed significantly. There has been several policies, several guidelines from the regulators on the guide of how this is supposed to work. Now, but these are good things, I'll say good ideas that the regulator has in terms of how we want to drive this particular product. However, there are still local nuances that have also held back the further spread of this thing. Some of those local nuances include our literacy rate. Okay? Don't forget, so of course, when I say literacy, now I'm not even just talking about people who can read and write, because English is not really a measure of wisdom as far as I'm concerned, or of knowledge.
Yeah.
Because there are people who do not understand English but are smart in their own way. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So that person, the average man, maybe doesn't even speak one word of English, but tell him I have 10 tubers of yam at 5,000 naira, he knows what that comes to instantly.
Absolutely.
So you get what I mean. Now, so literacy is also a major thing. Now, one of the things that we found is that a lot of people, when we were developing the agency banking framework, some of us we take responsibility, sat in our fancy offices in Lagos, Marina, or wherever across Lagos, coming up with those, how we thought it should be used.
Yeah.
But when we got to the field, we started seeing a different experience. In most cases, we had to roll back, take the feedback from the market, and go and make some changes,
Absolutely.
some adjustments here and there, just to make sure that what we have is best fit for the market, right? So, what we have currently, are we there yet? No.
Okay.
Have there been improvements? Yes. Are there still more room for changes and flexibility? I'll say yes. Do we have the coverage required? No. But there are many factors that come together to make that what it is today.
Let's talk about build on this. So on the literacy side, the way I'd like to see it is, because when you look at typically an agent, for instance, all I need in a rural setting, for instance, is to trust this agent, know, and the FSP by regulation also is supposed to do agent due diligence to make before the agent is onboarded. So this agent is known, has a location that can be tracked. We can find if the agent goes haywire, for instance, we can trace the agent to a particular location. Also, regulation says agent also should be owner of existing businesses, so that again that helps for due diligence, helps for trust, helps for liquidity management, and all of that. So agents should naturally solve the problem of literacy for those, who do not have, who cannot read. So I come to an agent, look, I tell you what you want, I want to do, and you help me with that transaction.
Okay, but sorry, just to cut you in there.
Yeah.
You mentioned agents. In the Nigerian sector today, in the Nigerian industry, we have different categorization of licensing.
Absolutely.
We have the central switch, which is NIBS or the PTSA, as the case may be. You have the financial institutions, commercial banks, microfinance banks, all FSPs. You get what I mean? Then you also have fintechs. Then you now have super agents. Now it's a hierarchy.
Absolutely.
Before the final agents themselves. Now, for what you're mentioning, I believe that some of those responsibilities now lie with the super agents who are recognized by the regulators to take on that responsibility to say, because we are trying to drive financial and economic inclusion, it is vital that we do not just assume that these people know what to do.
True.
We take the initiative, and a lot of us, in this space, I know currently do that. You have where we go to local communities, where we have town halls, showing them what they need to do. Some people who had never walked into a banking hall before, they can relate with what you're talking about because you're communicating to them in their local parlance.
Sure.
And so you're able to pass that message across. So what I was trying to say is that the responsibility for that training or bringing them up to speed, now somewhat lies not just with the super agents, but primarily with the super agents who, of course, they are the people known to the regulators.
Yeah.
Now, there are now other
auxiliary
services that the industry can now do, maybe through engines like EFINA, which is currently happening today, or SANEF, or even commercial banks.
Yeah.
So it's an entire puzzle, and everybody's contributing their part to the bigger picture. So that's how I see it.
Okay, so that part is clear. But I really wanted to drag you into this conversation around obstacles that really limit use of agency banking, and when I say agency banking, I'm also referring to the POS, as we call it, right? From helping us to achieve the mandate of inclusion.
Correct.
And by saying that, so the cost of traveling to a bank location, a physical bank branch, is eliminated, right?
Correct.
We save time.
Correct.
Because we are not, in fact, security that you withdraw money and along the way you are robbed, all of those ones are kind of eliminated.
Taken out, yes.
But when you look at the configuration today, we're driving cashless policy on one hand, and at the same time, there seems to be another cash economy that has now been created. So I'll give you an instance. The agents tell you that they go to the bank and they don't find money. They go to the ATM, they don't see money.
They get the cash outside of the bank.
They get to get the cash outside. And that cost is transferred to users. So there is cost we're trying to avoid now coming back into the frame
New
again.
cost line has been
Exactly.
introduced.
So that's one. Then we also look at connectivity. So now wear your OEM cap, right? We also look at products that can be sold via, the agent location. What are really the barrier portfolio, if we're to dimension, that make, POS, either it has not, scaled as it should be in terms of even distribution, or that we are now restricted to cash in, cash out.
Okay.
Whereas other services could be there.
Okay.
And those barrier portfolio could even be, there is a network issue, right, in terms of connectivity, rural, urban dispersion. Could all these things also be what have congregated to then mean that distribution is now concentrated in some areas? So help me dimension the barrier portfolio, right, the array of barriers, and what those mean for inclusion.
I think you already mentioned, in fact, when I was getting ready for this session, a lot of the things you mentioned were some of the things I already put in my notes.
Please go on.
Interestingly, liquidity, network connectivity, is super important. Now, this cash economy you spoke about, a few years ago, I learned something, that when you're creating a solution, always think about the problem of your solution. Very critical. A lot of times, some things that we do is that we create a solution. The solution is not working optimally. Then we start coming to use a hammer to kill an ant, rather than trying to see how the best way to resolve that challenge. But we come and we're just using the biggest possible means to solve a problem that could have just been easily fixed with collaboration. Now, we were trying to solve a cashless problem. At the end, created a cash problem outside of the banking hall. Thanks to some of the MMOs today who have led the charge in trying to really drive this, because that has also reduced dependence on cash. I probably just don't want to mention names, but I think the average Nigerian on the street today, some people have become a little comfortable, unlike the early days, have become more comfortable with the MMOs using their wallet system, to address this cashless need. So, but before that, there was a cash problem. Now, what it meant was that I go to the bank, I need cash. I go to an ATM, because of a regulation, I cannot get up to a certain amount
of cash
from the ATM. I walk into the banking hall, there is still that challenge. And so, of course, because we are Nigerians, we always find a way around situations. When we are pushed to the wall and we're always in a tight corner, we always find ways to innovate, I dare say. Now, all that simply meant was that super agents and people within that space, the FSPs, had to find smart ways to mop up cash, in quotes, avoid that cash from getting back to the bank, but circulating is within the economy without having that cash back in the banking hall.
All right.
Now, so one of the largest, I'll say, cash points in Nigeria today is fuel stations.
True.
Okay. So what you see is super agents go into agreements with fuel stations in a rural area and say, hey, I'll mop up all your cash, right? In fact, sometimes they stand just outside of the station. They mop up the cash. People come to them, get cash to pay for a service, because not everybody goes with a card. Not everybody probably has network to do a transfer. And not even all stations accept those things. So you still have to pay with cash.
So there are two problems you've identified. There is connectivity or network, as it is.
I'm even getting to connectivity because it's a broader issue.
Yeah, so you would touch on that. Then you also highlighted trust issue.
Very important.
Please.
Very important. So now the agents, the super agents, have built some relationship with, let's say, a fuel station owner. So they've built some mutuality in terms of trust. We know ourselves. So we're working together technically. Take out my cash, fund my position. You do whatever you want to do with your cash. But of course, there's still, we must always bear in mind that there are regulations. As an agent, there are certain expectations of you by the regulation. Some of the new ones recently that you cannot do more than 1 million. Your wallet should not be more than 1 million at a time. Now, some of those regulations also, but in the light of where we find ourselves, the average agent on the street who does these things for survival probably cannot keep 1 million. So let's say 100,000 in a day, but they're turning around that cash and they're able to get. So there's that informal sector of cash, which is outside of the banking hall, which is currently serving the agents network today. But like I said, because of the growth of the MMOs and the wallet system in Nigeria, I think that challenge is gradually being curbed in the urban areas.
Okay.
In the urban areas. So people are beginning to trust those services. So people probably do not carry as much cash as they will. But in the rural areas, once you step out of places like Lagos and Abuja, then you now see that there is still that ecosystem of that cash mop-up going around informally, but to serve a need, because at the end of the day, like I always say, cash is still king.
Okay, we'll come back to something that you spoke about, and that's really around when you were discussing the issue of some people don't still want to receive transfers or digital payments, and they will still tell you, go and withdraw cash.
Correct.
I've been in an instance where the person that was directing me from a pharmacy, when I was making payment, I realized that terminal was bearing the merchant's name, which is the pharmacy.
Yes.
But they directed me to the opposite side of the road. So it's like I was withdrawing from the pharmacy to pay the pharmacy.
Robbing Peter to pay Paul.
And I was paying for drugs purchase, which he was going to earn profit. At the same time, for cash withdrawal, I was also paying a charge, which is also going to earn profit. And that leaves me at, so inclusion. But we'll come back to that. Please, wear your OEM cap.
Okay, but before I do, can I speak about the connectivity?
Yes,
or is that where we're going?
No, we will get there.
Okay,
so you weave this into it.
All
right. Now, today's OEMs, right, are not just device, suppliers, again, they have become partner into the growth of financial inclusion agenda.
Correct.
Remember, our topic is, POS terminal agency banking, right, and the inclusion agenda. So we're looking for a silver lining.
Correct.
Where does the opportunity really lie in the context of all these things that we have discussed?
Correct.
So if OEMs are not just providers of devices, right, but they are partners, my question really is, how are we as OEM innovating in terms of design, in terms of durability, in terms of technology readiness within the geographies that we serve, and of course the services that terminals, then provide that are better suited. So this is like customer centric. So you look at the Nigerian environment, what can, beyond cash in, cash out, what can terminals be used for, right? Okay. And again, I would take even beyond agent now into the merchant environment also. So how are we innovating, And you look at this innovation around the complexities of the issues that you discuss, including connectivity, right? And you can use Newland NPT, as a case.
I was just going to segue into that.
Yeah, please.
So this is a very good opportunity for me to just talk about some of the things that we do at Newland Payment. Newland Payments is a leading and foremost POS OEM globally with over 31 years experience. We've been around for 31 years and counting. That's no fluke by any way. We have presence in over 120 countries, including Nigeria. Nigeria is one of our biggest markets in Africa.
Nigeria is always a big market.
Oh, definitely. We have all the right indices. We have the population. We have the people. We have the funds.
Yeah.
Compared to some other African countries. And most importantly, it's a card-led market.
True.
And so we have presence in 120 countries. But one thing that keeps us going, and one of the things that makes us stand out as an OEM, or that has kept us this long, is our ability to innovate, number one. Number two, our ability to research where trends are leading to. As part of what we do at Newland, on an annual basis, at least 10% of our yearly profits is plowed back into research and development. And now the reason why we do that is basically the world is changing like every day.
So in speaking to the world is changing, and you're going to continue in that light, so that we manage time. Your R&D, right? Yes. How is that informing innovation, and what kind of innovations have you seen, that from what you do are likely to unlock opportunities? Fantastic. A build-up follow-up question would be, what are the innovations beyond POS?
Beyond POS.
Yeah.
This is a very...
Or are we going to be here for another 100 years?
Okay, so I'll say this. This space is changing, and let me speak like a prophet. I'll say that this space is changing rapidly.
Okay.
In the next 2 to 5 years, okay, let me reduce it. 3 to 5 years, there will be some radical changes in how we make payments. There will be some radical changes into what point of sale literally means. A few years ago, I'll just give you some very visible ones, and you can relate with me. The first set of POS devices that were probably deployed in this market, I don't know if I'm allowed to call any names, but there's a particular one called Tech Mahindra.
Okay.
Tech Mahindra was the first guy that came to drive financial inclusion, and big devices had like a typewriter on it. So the financial inclusion guys have to carry it around to onboard agents. A few years down the line, we moved to Linux-based POS devices, PCI 1 devices. There was a sharp revolution that came from the card schemes to say, hey, move all devices from PCI 1 to PCI 2. Now, that was still Linux technology.
Yeah.
However, just at the cusp of COVID, there was a new wave of Android-based POS devices.
Pause. Are there still Linux devices in the market?
I wish I didn't have to say this on this podcast, but in Nigeria today, I dare say that over 60% of the devices we have in the market are Linux-based.
Now, where you are speaking to how the innovation looks like based on what you also do at Newland, right? Please bear in mind what the implication of still having Linux devices will be for this geo-tagging policy.
Ooh, it's a big one.
Now, so I want you to marry everything together here.
Okay, so I was just talking about that evolution.
Yes.
And so we started with smaller 2-inch screens, even 1.8.
Yeah.
We moved to 2.8. Then when the Android devices came, we moved to 5-inch, moved to 6-inch. Then we moved back to 4.5. But what I mean is that we evolved from Linux to Android, from smaller screens to bigger screens. Now, what we began to see as part of the future trends, well, maybe not in Nigeria, but I'm talking about what I see even outside of the country and some of the things that we have on our roadmap. The future is going to be a bigger screen.
Okay.
A bigger screen. In fact, tablets like this
Okay.
might start accepting payments. Well, I've seen something like that already. So I just know I'm not at liberty to reveal certain things.
Yeah.
But IoT is a thing.
Yeah.
So I'm saying everything will become an instrument of payment. But I'm saying the bigger screens is something that we should get ready for. So it will no longer just be a point of sale device like we know it.
Yeah.
It's going to change form. But guess what? Still able to accept payments and provide additional services.
Might you just hypothetically, or just one or two of those services that we're likely to see beyond?
Okay, so one of the things that will drive that is contactless payments. Now, the reason why is that imagine putting a chipset for card acceptance into this device.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible. Not like it's impossible, but it just doesn't look aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
So what makes sense is I have a device like this. I want to use it to accept payments. What if I just tap this device and I can send you an e-receipt, transaction completed? There's a level of trust.
Yeah.
The industry has moved, right? So that trust is growing. I believe as the trust begins to grow, it becomes easier for people to get used to these kind of changes as they come. We'll probably have more kiosks, more interactive devices, not in the form of ATMs like you have it, but more interactive devices that can accept payments and also be a point of sale. So bigger screens will come. Now, the implication of that to our local market. Now, I want to bring this home.
Please do.
Because I'll say that we are late adopters compared to the other markets outside of Nigeria. And so because we're also trying to drive financial inclusion, which is heavy on trust, because there's no financial inclusion without trust. So right now, I think the industry is getting to the stage of maturity gradually. We're not there, but trust me, compared to last year, not even 2 years ago, there has been a major uptake compared to last year. Now, so people are beginning to trust these services more. People are beginning to get more comfortable with these services. A few years ago, if you tell someone download OPay, they say, no, I don't use those kind of apps. But these days, people say, oh, that's my utility app. I'm not brand selling anybody's,
I know.
but this is my utility app. I use it for this purpose. So I'm saying people are beginning to trust. On the back of that, this would also help us to drive inclusion, right? Now, we still have our local problems like connectivity. When you step out of Lagos, now this is us having this conversation in a fancy room, nice design, nice room in Lagos. But if we travel to Delta State, Otoyede, for example, some people don't even know where that is.
True.
However, when you're driving through certain places like Ugeli, you get into a point where there's no network. Then you get into a point where you see 2G. You get to a point where you see 3G, maybe
and sometimes
4G.
it's fluctuating.
Sometimes you don't even see anything. Now, that is the reality of the real people we are trying to include. I believe that is the goal of financial inclusion. So we're saying whether there is network or there is no network, we should be able to meet those people and provide a service to them in their locality, and they are satisfied. Satisfaction is the end of all of this at the end of the day.
I'm a bit worried, right? And my worry is this: what you have described now is the future,
correct,
and is a very near future.
Very near future.
So how ready is the Nigerian market? Because again, I asked you a question to say, if we still have Linux terminals in the market, there is a geo-tagging policy which should be Android 10 compliant anyway, right?
Correct.
There is investment in those areas. So those terminals, you can't just, pack them and throw them off, right? Where are the silver lines? Where are the opportunities, for instance, right? As an OEM, are there arrangement opportunities to say, you know what, we'll mop up what is, of course, there are markets that we don't do recycling anyway, but we're going to take these devices out of the market and we'll bring newer ones at this kind of arrangement. Are there opportunities in that area?
Allow me to be politically correct with this answer.
I want you to be realistically correct. Yes.
I want to be realistically and politically correct because it's a tough call. Like every sale, as far as I'm concerned, I'm saying now, this even out of the POS, it's a contract.
True.
I walk into a store, I buy something. Once I exchange value, I take it, it's gone. Depreciation begins to set in. Let's even use a device like this. Depreciation begins to set in. Once depreciation sets in, the value is reduced. That's one side. The second side is how quickly technology is changing. Remember what I said. that a lot is changing in terms of chipsets. Now, well, everybody knows AI. Very soon, legitimately, we are going to start having AI-based POSs. So I'm saying some messaging going on within the device that are AI-driven.
Okay.
Now, I'm saying all of these things are happening very quickly. The chipsets that were used to produce those devices and the chipsets used to produce the devices. Now, bear in mind that, fun fact, those devices, those Linux early days devices that we used were even more expensive than the Android devices that we see today.
True.
On the average today, you can find a nice Android device between $80 to $100 in this market. But those days when we're buying devices were as much as $250, $200. Now, the price is crashing, demand is increasing, but there's also a new technology. So the reason people are able to get the new technology is because technology is evolving. Now, I said I was going to be politically correct. How do you take that old technology and say there has to be a replacement? The only answer, as far as I'm concerned,
As an OEM,
the government is trying to drive this. If the government is willing to provide some, this is not the solution, it's my own thought process. I'll call it a subsidy, a subsidization, or a plan, or a pathway for players within the, FSPs generally, on how to, because the financial inclusion goal 2030 is here already. 90% or 95%.
about 95% by 2028.
Now, see, I was even saying 2030. If that is going to happen, some of these policies might, in the short term, stifle the growth that we're trying to drive.
In speaking to that, what are the policy shifts that you envisage that then allows both FSPs and OEMs, to come together and see how we transition smoothly into this near future we're talking about?
I think one of the fastest ones is the regulators have to give players within the industry. Okay, so let's do it this way. I'll say, let it be guidelines on policies on end of life of devices.
Okay.
I dare say mandatory end of life. So there are still devices in this market that people have been using for 8 years.
So the point is an investment, right?
It's an investment.
Yeah.
It's capex. It's huge.
It's huge. So yeah, we are about rounding up now. And my concern really is that end of life policy, right? That framework. Is there a way as an OEM that, because you just said there's a lot that goes into R&D,
Correct.
which you are pumping a lot into.
Correct.
And I'm sure there are other OEMs who are doing so.
Yes.
How do we? Because again, these are also creating environmental hazards when you just pile them up, right?
You're not able to recycle.
Exactly. Has our R&D as an OEM,
Yes.
Pointed you to ways through which we can take these things from the market, even though it's not going to give you up to even 20% of the initial value, but at least it creates, a pathway, exactly, kind of a cushion, a buffer to an FSP who is now going to request for new devices. Devices. Yeah. And what role will policy have to do to make sure that, look, the OEMs and the FSPs are able to work hand in hand, to get to that safe landing?
Thank you for that question, because it's a very interesting question, especially where we find ourselves now with the new policy of Android 10, geo-tagging, ISO messaging, device specification.
Absolutely.
The CBN, what the CBN has tried to do is a standardization so that we are at par with what is going on out there.
Absolutely.
But it's going to be a gradual process. I envisage situations where we will start having, as OEMs, these engagements with the regulators directly, where we can forge a path for the industry. So there will be specific commercial conversations, there will be specific commercial agreements. So it will now be an industry-based or an industry-led engagement, no more on a silos basis of bank or FSP or fintech coming to meet the OEMs. It will now be an industry-led, should I say, negotiation to say, okay, we're expecting to grow 1M or 1x or 10x in 2 years. What levels of commercials can we do to drive down the cost? For if we're not able to replace, how can we drive down the cost together or provide some subsidization, not reducing the quality, maintaining the quality, ensuring that the security standards are maintained, but driving the cost down to ensure that our financial inclusion drive does not die. So it has to be a collaborative effort.
Absolutely. And we're going to wrap up. So you talked about the policy shift you see.
Yes.
in terms of negotiating price, I know the guideline on terminal. I think provides for, and that was issued by CBN a couple of years ago, where the PTSA, right, have a position that can then help negotiate pricing with OEMs, right?
We're happy to work with the PTSA.
So you haven't seen that play out anyway
yet. There are conversations going on.
All right.
At the corridors,
okay,
but it hasn't played out fully yet.
Okay.
But as Newland NPT and other OEMs I know, we're all happy to work with the regulators to ensure that this is done.
All right.
Definitely.
So you talked about policy shifts already, right? You
Correct.
talked about collaboration.
Correct.
Is there any last word, that you think, as an OEM and as a financial inclusion advocate, you think that can help us unlock these opportunities that you see? Again, remember you also spoke about the shift we're likely to see from what the terminals currently do and the new forms that terminals are going to take, right? Offline payment, you talked about that. Wrap up all these things and, just to close this conversation.
Thank you, and thank you. This has been a really, really insightful conversation. For me, I speak again as an OEM. There are many components that make one device.
Yeah.
As technology is evolving, it only makes sense that we evolve with technology. This can now also help us save cost. In the early days, we had magstripe. What if we take out the magstripe and then adoption of contactless grows? Then we take out inserting of the card, and all I need to do is just tap. Now, as the OEM, I've saved cost on form factor.
True.
I remove this form because those things also come at a cost.
Yeah.
So we take out those elements and just, for example, this is futuristic.
Yeah.
All I need to do is just have the contactless capability on that device. That once I tap, payment is done. That will drive down the cost significantly of devices.
Isn't our current terminals already not having NF,
They do, but I'm saying they have that. They have the chip. They have the mag stripe because of different requirements.
Exactly.
So I'm saying that, which is why I said an industry-based negotiation, but that can only happen as the trust in the industry grows to a certain level.
All right.
But I think there's still a lot to come, and I believe that Nigeria is on the right track to reach the financial inclusion goals.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have been speaking to Fego Okiomah, country manager, Newland NPT, an OEM that has significant presence in the Nigerian market. You've heard it all in terms of the policy shifts, the collaborations that need to happen so that the innovations around, terminals, can become realistic in the Nigerian market. Remember, here at EFINA, what we do is to bring these issues to the fore, discuss them and surface answers that can help us grow together as an industry. I look forward to seeing you in our next episode. And once more again, Fego, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
It's been my pleasure speaking to you.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Ladies and gentlemen,
thank you very much.
Thanks and bye-bye for now.
The EFINA Podcast.